to Forgotten Kingdoms of Africa, a channel where we explore the untold stories of the past and imagine the history that almost was. Today, we do not journey to a place that is forgotten by name. Indeed, its name echoes through the universities of the world and hallows the halls of great museums. We journey to Ile-Ife, the cradle, the source of the Yoruba people. History books will tell you that Ife was a magnificent medieval city-state that flourished between the 12th and 15th centuries in what is now southwestern Nigeria. They will show you images of these breathtaking sculptures, works of naturalism that defied the artistic understanding of the Western world when they were first unearthed. They will tell you it was a center of trade, spirituality, and divine kingship. And all of this is true. But it is the truth meant for outsiders. It is the surface truth, a beautiful, shining mask placed over a reality far more profound and far more unsettling. What if I told you that the exquisite art of Ife was not just decoration, but a technological imprint left by a civilization far older than the medieval period? What if the legends of gods descending on iron chains from the sky were not mere metaphors for spiritual awakening, but literal historical accounts of a contact event that changed the course of human evolution in West Africa? Today, we peel back the layers of time. We step off the known path and into the shadows of the sacred grove. Sit back. Breathe deeply. Let the modern world fade away. We are traveling back to the dawn of time, to hear the secrets the Onis, the divine kings, never told the outside world. Welcome to the true Kingdom of Ife. To understand the alternate reality of Ife, we must first understand the orthodox story of creation. The Yoruba cosmology is perhaps one of the most complex and beautiful systems of belief in human history. It teaches that before land existed, there was only watery chaos below and the spiritual realm of the sky gods, the Orisha, above. The supreme being, Olodumare, sent Oduduwa down from the heavens to create the earth. The legend says Oduduwa climbed down a great chain. He possessed a snail shell filled with sand and a 5-toed chicken. He poured the sand onto the water and set the chicken down. The chicken scratched and spread the sand, expanding the landmass until it created the world as we know it. The spot where the first land began was Ile-Ife, the place where creation began. This is the myth. It is beautiful. But what if we view this not through the lens of primitive religion, but through the lens of forgotten memory? In our alternate history timeline, the Great Chain was no mere rope of iron. It was a tether, a space elevator connecting a civilization in low orbit to the planet's surface. The entities that descended were not gods in the supernatural sense, but refugees from a higher plane of existence, perhaps a dying star system, or perhaps an earlier advanced terrestrial civilization fleeing a cataclysm. They chose Ife because of its unique geomagnetic properties. It was a power spot on the Earth's grid. They didn't just find Ife, they engineered it as a sanctuary. When Orthodox historians date Ife's rise around the 11th century AD, they are only dating the resurgence of a culture that had already existed for millennia, hidden beneath the canopy, guarding technology that the rest of the Stone Age world would have called magic. Let us look at undeniable facts.
Archaeology confirms that by the 11th century, Ile-Ife was a vast urban center. It was surrounded by enormous earthen wall systems. But more impressively, its streets were paved. Millions of potsherds, broken pieces of pottery, were meticulously laid on edge in herringbone patterns, creating hard, durable roads that defied the rainy season mud. This was a feat of civic engineering rivaling anything in medieval Europe at the time. But why? Why expend such immense labor just for smooth walking? In the accepted history, this was for ritual cleanliness and the grandeur of the Ouni. In our alternate timeline, the pavements were not just roads, they were a circuit board. The ancestors of Ife understood telluric currents, the natural electrical pathways running through the Earth's crust. The specific geometric arrangement of the pottery shards, combined with conductive quartz deposits native to the region, created a massive, city-wide energy grid. This grid didn't power light bulbs, it powered consciousness. It created a localized electromagnetic field that enhanced focus, suppressed aggression in the populace, and allowed the priestly class to enter deep, synchronized meditative states essential for accessing the sky knowledge left by Oduduwa. Ife was not just a city, it was a psychic amplifier. And then there is the glass. Historians marvel at Ife's glass production. They were melting materials at incredibly high temperatures, creating dichroic glass and the famous blue segi beads, centuries before similar techniques were common elsewhere. Where did they get the furnaces capable of such consistent extreme heat? The secret lies in what they weren't telling the traders who came to buy the beads. The glass wasn't meant for ornamentation. The beads were information storage devices, crystalline structures encoded with the history, the star maps, and the genetic data of the progenitors who descended the iron chain. When you look at an ancient Ife bead in a museum today, you aren't looking at jewelry. You are looking at a zipped file from 5,000 years ago that we no longer have the software to read. So the inevitable question arises. If Ile-Ife possessed technologies of terraforming, psychic grids, and crystalline data storage, why did they not conquer the world? Why were they eventually surpassed by the military might of the Benin Empire, or later subjected to colonial rule? This is the tragedy of our alternate history. The civilization of Ife was not built on conquest, it was built on containment. They knew that humanity outside the sacred grove was not ready for the sky knowledge. They saw the rise of empires around them, aggressive, hungry, fueled by iron and blood. Around the 14th century, a great council was held by the Oni and his high priests, the Babalawos. They consulted the Ifa oracle, the binary coding system left by the ancestors. The reading was clear. To share the technology was to destroy the world. To use the technology for war was to corrupt their own souls. They made the ultimate sacrifice. They chose the Great Withdrawal. They deliberately dismantled their most advanced systems. They buried the bronze interfaces, creating the archaeological sites we find today. They stopped maintaining the pavement grid, letting the jungle reclaim the circuitry. They encoded the high knowledge into complex myths, songs, and rituals, hiding the truth in plain sight, waiting for a time when humanity would be mature enough to understand it again. Ife didn't fall. It went to sleep. It transformed itself from a technological superpower into a spiritual sanctuary, guarding the embers of a fire that once burned brighter than the sun. This is the end of the beginning. We have established the foundation of the hidden Ife. In the coming hours, we will explore the specifics,
We will look at the connection between Ife and ancient Egypt that mainstream scholars deny. We will examine the specific bloodlines of the Onis that carried the genetic markers of the Sky People. And we will look at the moments in history when the sleeping technology almost woke up. Stay with us, traveler. The night is long, and the secrets are deep.
There is a shadow that stretches across the African continent, a shadow that scholars have spent centuries trying to ignore. It is the shadow of a connection. If you look at the map, thousands of miles of harsh Sahara desert and dense scrubland separate the Nile Valley from the Niger River. And yet, if you listen to the whispers of the elders, or if you look closely at the linguistic DNA of the Yoruba people, the distance disappears. Many have pointed to the striking similarities, the linguistic roots of the word Orisha and its phonetic kinship with the Egyptian Osiris. The similarity between the Desret, the red crown of Lower Egypt, and the sacred beaded crowns of the Onis. The myth of Lamad Rudu, the legendary forefather who supposedly traveled from the east to found the kingdom. Mainstream history calls these conjectural. They say these are the result of late-period migrations, or perhaps just the coincidental evolution of human symbols. But traveler, we are here for the secret truth. In our alternate history, Ife and Egypt were not distant strangers. They were sibling colonies. They were two branches of the same celestial tree, planted by the same progenitors who descended the iron chain. While Egypt was built to be the external library, a monument of stone and geometry, Ife was designed to be the internal archive. Egypt was the body. Ife was the mind. The mathematical matrix, Ife as quantum code. To the untrained eye, the process of Ife divination looks like a beautiful ancient ritual. The priest casts the ikin, the sacred palm nuts. He marks lines in the wood dust. He recites verses. To the colonizer, it was superstition. To the modern scholar, it is cultural heritage. But look closer. Ife is based on a system of 16 principal signs called Odu. These 16 signs are squared, creating a total of 256 Odu Ifa. Does that number sound familiar to you? 256 is the fundamental basis of modern computing. It is the number of values that can be represented by an 8-bit byte. In our hidden history, the open Ifa is not a tray, it is a haptic interface. The palm nuts are not tools of chance, they are biological random number generators. When a Babalawo reads the Ifa, he is not merely predicting the future, he is accessing a quantum probability engine left behind by the progenitors. Each Odu is a compressed data file, a complex mathematical algorithm that maps out every possible human experience and every potential timeline. The 16,000 verses associated with these Odu are the README files. They are the software. The priests of Ife were not just religious leaders, they were system administrators. They were using a binary-coded oral-digital interface to calculate the most favorable outcomes for their society, managing everything from crop yields to genetic diversity, centuries before the first vacuum tube was ever powered on in the West. The pyramids versus the forests, the storage wars. A question often haunts the minds of those who study Africa. If Ife was so advanced, why didn't they build in stone? Why are there no great pyramids in the heart of Yoruba land? The answer lies in the philosophy of persistence. The Egyptian branch of the progenitor civilization chose hard storage. They used granite and limestone to create monuments that would defy time through sheer mass. They built for the short eternity, a few thousand years.
They knew that stone eventually crumbles, and that any structure that can be seen can be looted, desecrated, or claimed by a conqueror. The architects of Ife were wiser. They chose soft storage. They realized that the most durable storage medium in the universe is not stone. It is life. It is DNA. It is the rhythmic vibration of sound and the cycles of the forest. Ife was designed as a living computer. The sacred groves were not just parks or places of worship, they were biological hard drives. The specific arrangement of trees, the mineral content of the soil, and the symbiotic relationship between the plants and animals were all engineered to maintain a specific resonance. They didn't write their secrets on papyrus that could burn. They wove them into the Gelede songs, the Oriki chants, and the very genetic code of the people. You can destroy a pyramid. You can burn a library. But how do you destroy a secret that is stored in the way a grandmother hums a lullaby? How do you delete a program that is running in the blood of 10 million people? Ife chose to become invisible so that it could become eternal. The lost frequency. There is a legend that the Great Pyramid and the center of the Oni's palace at Ife are perfectly aligned on a specific terrestrial frequency. In the alternate reality we are uncovering, these two sites were once in constant communication. A psychic bridge existed across the Sahara. When the sky knowledge was still active, the pharaohs and the Onis were in a state of constant synchronization, two nodes in a planetary network. But something happened, a signal interference that we will explore in the coming chapters. The Egyptian node was eventually hacked, first by the Greeks, then the Romans, until its power was drained and its secrets were buried in the sand. But the Ife node? It didn't break, it simply encrypted. The Oduduwa became a hidden partition in the mind of the Yoruba people. The technology of the bronze heads was unplugged and buried. The pavement grid was allowed to be covered by the earth. If you go to Ife today, you might feel a slight vibration in the soles of your feet as you walk near the palace. The locals say it is the ground breathing. It is not. It is the hard drive spinning. It is the oracle code still running in the background, waiting for the user, waiting for us to remember the password. Take a moment, traveler. Let the weight of this sink in. You are not just a descendant of a kingdom, you are a carrier of a code. But as Ife protected its knowledge, a different power was rising to the east, a power that chose iron over spirit and conquest over contemplation. Next, we journey to the gates of the Benin Empire to see what happens when the Ase of Ife is challenged by the fire of the warrior kings.
For centuries, the world was in balance. Ife was the sun, and all other kingdoms were the planets that orbited its spiritual light. But as the 12th century turned into the 13th, a new force began to stir in the east. The Kingdom of Benin, Edo, was rising. In the textbooks of our world, the story is simple. Benin was a child of Ife. The people of Benin, tired of their own internal strife, sent a request to the Oni of Ife for a prince to rule them. Prince Oranmiyan was sent, and though he found the land difficult to govern, he fathered a son, Eweka, who became the first Oba of the new dynasty. The orthodox view says that Benin simply grew into a military superpower, expanding its borders through the sheer force of its army, while always maintaining a respectful, distant reverence for Ife as its spiritual ancestral home. But the secret history tells a far more dangerous tale. This was not a peaceful transition of power. It was a schism of the soul. The forbidden weapon, Benin's divergence. In our alternate timeline, the rift between Ife and Benin was not over land or taxes, it was over the Ase. As we have explored, the Ase, the fundamental life force and energy source of the progenitors, was being used by the Onis of Ife for enlightenment, climate control, and the expansion of consciousness. It was a power used for maintenance, not for dominance. But the early Obas of Benin were visionaries of a different, darker kind. They looked at the chaos of the world around them, the rising threats from the north and the shifting tides of the coast, and they made a radical decision. They wanted to weaponize the Ase. They sent envoys to Ife, demanding access to the deep software of the oracle code. They wanted to know how to channel the energy of the earth, not into the peaceful pavement grids, but into the blades of their swords and the hearts of their soldiers. The Oni refused. To weaponize the Ase was to invite the same cataclysm that had once forced the progenitors to flee their original home. And so the schism began. Benin didn't just leave the influence of Ife, they began a centuries-long project to reverse engineer the gods. The Bronze Proxy War, reverse engineering the divine. If you walk through the British Museum today, you will see the Benin Bronzes and the Ife heads near each other. To the casual observer, they are just different styles of African art. But look through the lens of our hidden history. The Ife Bronzes with thin-walled, high-conductivity interfaces, delicate receivers meant to tune in to the frequency of the cosmos. The Benin Bronzes, however, were something else entirely. They were heavy hardware. In the secret forges of the Igun Eronwon, the royal guild of brass casters, the Obas attempted to recreate the technology of the ancestors without the safety protocols of the Onis. They cast their bronzes thicker. They infused the copper with iron and other heavy metals to create a shielding effect. These were not just artworks, they were Saitic plate armor. The warriors of Benin began to wear bronze breastplates and helmets that were designed to store Ase. In battle, these soldiers were reported to exhibit supernatural strength, to move with a hive-mind synchronization, and to possess a terrifying resistance to pain. They had successfully created the world's first bio-enhanced infantry. But there was a cost. While the Ife technology expanded the mind, the Benin reverse engineering narrowed it. It amplified aggression. It turned the life force into death force. The peaceful radiance of the progenitors was being compressed into a jagged, burning fire. The silent standoff, the shorts and the circuits. By the 15th century, the tension reached a breaking point. The Benin Empire was at the height of their military might. Their walls, the largest earthworks in the world, protected a city that was becoming a fortress of reverse-engineered tech. The Oba's generals turned their eyes towards Ife. They believed that if they could capture the source, they could unlock the final codes and become literal gods on earth. They marched their bio-enhanced legions towards the sacred groves of Ife. But they never arrived. The legend says that as the Benin army approached the borders of Ife, the very ground began to hum with a sound so high-pitched it shattered the bronze fittings on their armor. The Oni of Ife had sent a final warning. He didn't send an army, he sent a signal. He had partially reactivated the pavement grid. The Oni sent word to the Oba, "You have learned to sharpen the Ase into a knife, but I am the one who controls the current. If you cross the border, I will reverse the flow. I will turn all the bronze armor into your coffins." This was the first instance of electronic warfare in human history, conducted with clay, quartz, and spirit. The spiritual DMZ.
A truce was struck, a spiritual demilitarized zone. Benin would be allowed to build its empire of iron and bronze, to dominate the coast and the trade routes. They would be the shield of the region, but they would never, ever attempt to seize the source again. Ife, in return, would remain in its self-imposed slumber. The Oni would continue to crown the Obas, providing a symbolic legitimacy key, but the actual admin access to the earth grid would remain locked away in the sacred groves. This is why, to this day, the Oba of Benin must send word to Ife for his coronation. It is not just tradition, it is a protocol. A reminder of the day the earth hummed and the warriors of iron realized they could never defeat the masters of the light.
As the 16th century dawned, a new vibration began to ripple across the waters of the Bight of Benin. It was a dissonant frequency, a jagged metallic clatter that the oracle code of Ife had long ago predicted. The ships of Europe had arrived. To the Portuguese, the Dutch, and later the British, the coast of West Africa was a white man's grave, a place of fever, gold, and ivory. They saw kingdoms of vast wealth and complex protocols, but they saw them through a veil of profound ignorance. The Orthodox history tells us that Ife, by this time, had become a quiet spiritual backwater, a city of ruins and rituals, its political power eclipsed by the musket fire of the Oyo Empire and the expansion of Benin. But in the secret history of the Forgotten Kingdom, this decline was not a failure. It was the final phase of the Great Encryption. The Ogboni, architects of the dark fiber. As the external world grew more chaotic, the Onis of Ife realized that the physical city could no longer be the primary fortress of the progenitor technology. They needed a dark fiber network, a human storage system that could survive even if the city were burned to the ground. They empowered the Ogboni. In mainstream history, the Ogboni are described as a powerful secret society of elders who balanced the power of the kings. But in our alternate timeline, the Ogboni were the data guardians. Each pair of bronze edan was more than a badge of membership. They were cryptographic keys. The chain linking the male and female figures represented the dual-key encryption required to access certain files within the oral tradition. When the transatlantic slave trade began to tear the fabric of West African society, the Ogboni performed a desperate, magnificent feat of engineering. They broke the oracle code into fragments and uploaded them into the African diaspora. They knew that thousands would be taken across the sea, so they ensured that the rhythms, the songs, and the mathematical structures of the Ase were hidden within the Santeria of Cuba, the Candomblé of Brazil, and the Vodun of Haiti. The Kingdom of Ife didn't just stay in Nigeria, it went cloud-based. It distributed its consciousness across the Atlantic, ensuring that no single colonial power could ever find the mainframe and shut it down. The British Museum, the great off-site backup. In 1897, the British launched a punitive expedition against Benin City. They looted thousands of bronzes, ivory tusks, and sacred objects. A few years later, Leo Frobenius arrived in Ife, discovering the terracotta and bronze heads and shipping them back to Europe. The world calls this theft, and in the physical realm it was. But consider the alternate perspective of the Guardians. By the late 19th century, West Africa was entering an extreme instability. The Guardians knew that if the physical hardware, the resonant bronze interfaces, remained in the palaces, they would likely be melted down for bullets or destroyed in the fires of colonial conquest. The secret history suggests that the Guardians allowed certain inactive interfaces to be taken. They recognized that the British Museum was, in a strange way, the most secure cold storage facility on the planet. By letting the colonizers steal the bronzes, the guardians ensured that the technology would be kept in climate-controlled environments, guarded by professional curators, and spread across the globe, where they could be studied by future generations when the signal returned. The British thought they were taking trophies of a dead past. In reality, they were unknowingly acting as unpaid security guards for the dormant hardware of a future awakening. The Century of Silence. For the last 100 years, Ife has been silent. The world transitioned into the age of oil, electricity, and the internet. The Potsherd Pavements were paved over with asphalt. The sacred groves were fenced off as tourist sites. To the modern eye, the mystery of Ife is a solved puzzle of art history. But for those who know how to listen, for those who understand that the binary code of the Ifa is still pulsing in the background radiation of the forest, the silence is not an absence, it is a countdown. The Great Withdrawal was never meant to be permanent. It was a quarantine, meant to protect the earth from the misuse of Ase until the human collective reached a certain level of system maturity. The quarantine is ending. The world's current technology is reaching its limit. We are searching for quantum computing, for clean energy, for ways to heal a dying planet. We are finally asking the questions that the Onis of Ife answered 10,000 years ago. As we move into our final chapter, we look at the modern day. We look at the strange anomalies occurring in the heart of Yoruba land, and we ask, is the cradle finally waking up?